Beyond Sandbox likely made over $10 million from pre-orders alone, and it's the most shameless money grab I've ever seen in all my years of VR. It hit #1 on the Quest Store within 2 days, and it's backed by one of the biggest VR YouTubers out there. And after playing it, I genuinely feel scammed. And I didn't even pay for it, which should tell you how bad this is. Let's talk about it. Now, literally the only props I can give to the developers and publishers of this game, which we'll talk about in a minute, is how good their marketing has been, because they somehow convinced over 500,000 people to wishlist this piece of crap. I honestly wasn't even gonna make this video, but after seeing Beyond Sandbox reach #1 most sold game on the Quest Store within 2 days of launching, I knew I had to warn people. And I'll even explain how to get your money back at the end of the video if you fell for it too. And here's the thing, I fell for it too. With all my years of VR and knowing all too well how different trailers and gameplay made by the developers can be from the actual experience the users are getting, I still fell for it. So how did they do it? Beyond Sandbox mainly used TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts to reel people in, and consistently went viral with short clips showing the various next-gen features that this game promises. And to be fair, this is kind of the perfect way to sell a game like this. Short-form content gives you a few seconds of controlled gameplay. Physics objects flying around, things reacting in cool ways, but none of the context. No performance issues, no jank, no limitations. Your brain kind of fills in the gaps and assumes the full experience is gonna feel like that. Now, I'm not gonna get into the so-called asset flipping, because really, if a game is genuinely good and delivers on the promise, I couldn't care less where they got their 3D models from. But here's where things get a bit more interesting. You might or might not be aware who is actually behind this game. You might be familiar with a little channel called VR Oasis. Now, Mike is one of the biggest VR creators out there and the owner of 2080 Games, who helped build and publish Beyond Sandbox. And to be clear, this is not a diss at 2080 Games. They've actually worked on some great stuff in the past, but knowing who's behind it makes this harder to ignore. Because when it's coming from someone who knows VR this well, expectations are different. The game did get delayed a bunch of times already, so I can't even imagine what it looked like back then if this is what we're dealing with right now. So what are we dealing with right now? Well, the promise was next-gen physics. And for a Quest game, I have to admit there are moments where it almost feels like it's getting there. But that's the problem, it's moments. Because the second you actually try to play it like a game, it completely falls apart. Performance is absolutely horrendous. And listen, I get it, physics and rendering take a lot of juice, especially on a standalone headset like the Quest. But this isn't just a bit rough around the edges. The level of stuttering, the visible fixed foveated rendering, objects glitching out, interactions breaking, this is the kind of stuff you expect from a prototype, not something that just became the #1 selling game on the store. Even just in the beginning tutorial area, grabbing, reloading, and just general basic interactions are constantly glitching out. Not to mention the graphics themselves. That's the moment it kind of clicked for me. This isn't just unpolished, it's fundamentally broken. And performance is one thing, you can maybe patch that, optimize it, get it to a decent spot. But multiplayer being completely unplayable, that's just a broken promise. Because yeah, the game technically has multiplayer, but even on a server with only 4 people, as you can see in the recording, it's barely functioning. And this is just the test map, so not much is even going on. I gave up even trying to find an actual deathmatch because not only were there none available in the server list, but I don't even want to imagine trying that at like 20 frames per second. But wait, it's labeled early access. And this is where we get into the actual problem. Beyond Sandbox isn't just a bad launch. It kind of encapsulates everything that's wrong with VR right now. Yeah, it takes a lot of money and skill to develop a good VR game, no one's denying that. But taking that money from users who were led to believe this was gonna revolutionize VR gaming, that's where it crosses the line. Now, to many of you, at 36 years old, I'm basically a dinosaur. But I miss the days when games actually released in a finished state. You bought a game and you got what you paid for. Now developers just slap that early access label onto anything, say they're gathering feedback, and maybe they are. But here's the problem, you as the user have no idea if this will actually ever get fixed. And VR is still small enough that hype matters more than reputation, which means games can succeed before they're good. And that's dangerous, because it sets a precedent. And look, I don't think this is necessarily malicious. But at some point, releasing something in this state stops being a mistake and starts being a decision. So yeah, don't buy this game right now. I can't say whether it's gonna get better with time, but right now it's unfinished and unstable, even for an early access title, and honestly shouldn't have released in this state. But here's where it gets weird. So far we've been talking about the Quest version of Beyond Sandbox, but maybe the Steam VR version with all the power of a proper gaming PC is actually miles better. Well, no surprise here, but despite the release date supposedly being the same as the Quest version, the PC VR one never actually dropped on Steam. They're claiming it's Steam's fault. But again, we're not talking about a bunch of amateurs here. 2080 Games knows exactly how the Steam publishing process works. Timelines, approvals, all of it. So realizing on the day of release that you can't actually release it just feels like a bit of a bait and switch. I do already have access to it on Steam, but I can't actually install it yet. So whenever it does drop, I'll probably make another video talking about the PC VR version, which at that point literally has no excuse being as bad as the Quest 3 one is. So if you haven't played Beyond Sandbox for more than 2 hours, which I don't see how you could have with the state it's in, then you can simply ask for a refund on the Meta Quest store, directly from the Meta Horizon app on your phone. Just click the menu icon on the top left, scroll down to purchase history, then click the 3 dots next to Beyond Sandbox and request a refund. I genuinely hate making videos like this. I want VR to succeed. I want developers to make money for their hard work. But tricking people into thinking they're buying something they're not, that's not something I can ever stand behind. It's why I've turned down sponsorships in the past, because I just couldn't recommend some of the low quality jank they were offering. Your trust matters more than a couple $100. And honestly, if this is what next gen VR looks like right now, we've got a problem. And VR doesn't get better when games like this succeeds, it gets worse. So if you appreciate brutally honest reviews, make sure to subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers guys!